Now, let's see. I've got about 5 minutes left, right? Okay, I want to tell you, all scientists aren't like that, you know, and there is a lot. There's a lot been going on since Isaac Newton and all that stuff happened. One of the things happened right around World War II, in that same time period before and surely as hell afterwards. Government realized that scientists aren't little strange dudes that, you know, hide in ivory towers and do ridiculous things with test tubes. Scientists, you know, made World War II, as we know it, quite possible. I mean, they made faster things. They made bigger guns to shoot them down with. You know, they made drugs to give the pilots if they were broken up in the process. They made all kinds of, I mean, they finally one giant bomb to end the whole thing, right? And everybody stepped back a little and said, you know, we ought to invest in this shit. Because whoever has got the most of these people working in the best places is going to have a dominant position, at least in the military, and probably in all kinds of economic ways. And they got involved in it, and the scientific industrial establishment was born. And out of that came a lot of scientists who were in there for the money, you know, because it was suddenly available. And they weren't the curious little boys that liked to put frogs up in the air. They were the same people that later went into medical school, you know, because there was money in it, you know, and later then they all got into business. I mean, there's waves of going into your high school person said, you want to be rich, you know, be a scientist, you know, not anymore. You want to be rich, you be a businessman. But a lot of people got in it for the money and the power and the travel. It's back when travel was easy. And like, those people don't think, they don't always tell you the truth. You know, there is nothing in their contract, in fact, that makes it to their advantage always to tell you the truth. So, and these are the people I'm talking about are people that, like, they say they're a member of the committee called, say, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they have these big meetings where they try to figure out how are we going to continually prove that the planet is getting warmer when that's actually contrary to most people's sensations. I mean, if you actually measure the temperature over a period, I mean, the temperature has been measured now pretty carefully for about 50, 60 years. Longer than that it's been measured, but in really nice, precise ways, and records have been kept for 50 or 60 years. And in fact, the temperature hadn't really gone up. It's like the average temperature has gone up a tiny little bit because the nighttime temperatures at the weather stations have come up just a little bit. But there's a good explanation for that, and that's that the weather stations are all built outside of town where the airport was, and now the town's moved out there, there's concrete all around, and they call it the skyline effect. And most responsible people that measure temperatures realize you have to shield your measuring device from that, and even then, you know, because the buildings get warm in the daytime and they keep it a little warmer at night. So the temperature has been sort of inching up. It should have been, but not a lot. Not like, you know, the first guy that got the idea that we were going to fry ourselves here, actually, he didn't think of it that way. His name was Svante Arrhenius. He was Swedish, and he said if you double the CO2 level in the atmosphere, which he thought, this is 1900, the temperature ought to go up about 5.5 degrees, he calculated. He was thinking of the Earth as kind of like, you know, like a completely ice-insulated thing with no stuff in it, really, just energy coming down, energy leaving. And so he came up with this theory, and he said, this will be cool because it'll be a longer growing season in Sweden, you know, and the surfers liked it. The surfers thought that's a cool idea because it's pretty cold in the ocean sometimes. But a lot of other people later on started thinking it would be bad, you know, but nobody actually demonstrated it. Right? I mean, the temperature as measured, and you can find this on our wonderful internet. You just go and look for all the NASA's records and all the Weather Bureau's records, and look at it yourself, and you'll see the temperature has the nighttime temperature measured on the surface of the planet has gone up a tiny little bit. So if you just average that in the daytime temperature, it looks like it went up about 0.7 degrees in the century. But in fact, it was just coming up. It was the nighttime. The daytime temperatures didn't go up. So, and Arrhenius' theory and all the global warmers, they would say, yeah, it should go up in the daytime too, if it's a greenhouse effect. Now, people like things that have like names like that, they can envision it, right? I mean, but people don't like things like this. Like you don't get all excited about things like the actual evidence, you know, which would be evidence for strengthening of the tropical circulation in the 1990s. It's a paper that came out in February. Most of you probably hadn't heard about it. evidence for large decadal variability in the tropical mean radiative energy budget. Excuse me. Those papers were published by NASA and some scientists at Columbia and Veliky and a whole bunch of people, Princeton. And those two papers came out in Science magazine, February the 1st. And the conclusion in both of these papers, and then also the Science editor's description of these papers for the quickie, is that our theories about global warming are completely wrong. I mean, what these guys were doing, and it's what this NASA people have been saying this for a long time. They say if you measure the temperature of the atmosphere, it isn't going up. It's not going up at all. We've been doing it very carefully now for 20 years from satellites, and it isn't going up. And in this paper, they showed something much more striking, and that was that they did what they call a radiation. I'm not going to go into the details of it, actually. It's quite complicated, but it isn't as complicated as they might make you think it is by the words they use in those papers. If you really get down to it, they say, the sun puts out a certain amount of energy. We know how much that is. It falls on the Earth. The Earth gives back a certain amount. When it gets warm, it makes redder energy, like infrared, like something that's warm gives off infrared. The whole business of the global warming trash, really, is that if there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere, the heat that's trying to escape won't be able to get out. But the heat coming from the sun, which is mostly down it's like 350 nanometers is where it's centered, that goes right through CO2. So you still get heated, but you don't dissipate any. Well, these guys measured all those things. I mean, you can talk about that stuff, and you can write these large reports, and you can get government money to do it. But they actually measured it, and it turns out that in the last 10 years, that's why they say decadal there, that the energy, the level of what they call imbalance has been way the hell over what was expected. Like the amount of imbalance, meaning heat's coming in and is not going out, that you would get from having double the CO2, which we're not anywhere near that, by the way. But if we did in 2025 or something have double the CO2 as we had in 1900, they say it would increase the energy budget by about, in other words, 1 watt per square centimeter more would be coming in than going out. So the planet should get warmer. Well, they found out in this study, these two studies by two different teams, that 5.5 watts per square meter have been coming in from 1998, 1999, and the place didn't get warmer. So the theory is complete. It's no good. These papers should have been called the end to the global warming fiasco, But they're concerned, and you can tell they have very guarded conclusions in these papers because they're talking about big laboratories that are funded by lots of money and by scared people. If they said, there isn't a problem with global warming any longer, so we can, they're funding. If you start a grant request with something like that, you say, global warming obviously hadn't happened. If they actually said that, I'm getting out. I'll stand up too, and I'll slowly get that. They have to say that. They have to be very cautious, but what I'm saying is you can be delighted because the editor of Science, who is no dummy, and both of these fairly professional, really professional teams have come to the same conclusion, and in the bottom of the lines in their papers they have to say what this means is that what we've been thinking was the global circulation model that would predict that the Earth is going to get overheated and stuff, that it's all wrong. It's wrong by a large factor. It's not by a small one. They just misinterpreted the fact that the Earth, there's obviously some mechanisms going on that nobody knew about because the heat's coming in and it didn't get warmer. So the planet is a pretty amazing thing. It's big and horrible and big and wonderful, and it does all kinds of things we don't know anything about. So, the reason I put those things all together, I was thinking, here's the way you're supposed to do science. Some science is done for other reasons than just curiosity. And there's a lot of things like global warming and ozone hole and, a whole bunch of scientific public issues that if you're interested in them, you have to get down to the details and read the papers called Large Decadal Variability in the Tropics. You have to figure out what all those words mean. And if you just listen to the guys who were hyping those issues and making a lot of money out of it, you'll be misinformed and you'll be worrying about the wrong things. Remember the 10 things that are going to get you. The one of them, and the asteroids is the one I really agree with there. You got to watch out for asteroids. Okay, thank you for having me here.